Good morning, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of English 100. Hopefully your weekend went well, you had a good weekend, and you are ready to kind of dive into where we're headed for essay number 2. I'm gonna go ahead and click on this week's module to take me into this week's module. It will land us kind of on that overview page where you can see all the dates and the point values for things. Gives you a little bit of a rundown of what to expect for this week. It's actually a little bit of a slow week this week, a lot of reading. We're going to take a little bit of a pause from all of the writing instruction and really dive into readings in order to kind of prep us to do some writing for essay number 2. So a lot of reading this week. I'm including here the breakdown for the Unit 2 overview, just so that you know where we're headed, right? When I was a student, I always used to get so aggravated when teachers would assign the essays after we had done all of the reading, because then I felt like, well, if I had known that in advance, then I probably would have been keeping an eye out for certain trends or patterns or themes. And so kind of I had to always go back and reread. So as an instructor, I always hand out, if I can, the assignment at the very beginning of the unit. So that way you can kind of keep in the back of your mind where we're headed, right? And you have a sense of what you're going to be reading for, what your purpose is. So the Unit 2 that we're talking about is, again, kind of asking that big question of what is getting in the way of students being successful. But now we're asking that in a much more general way. So Unit 1 was asking you personally, what is it for you that's getting in the way? And now number 2, what we're going to do is we're going to take that same question and we're going to be looking at it much more analytically. And we're going to be using all of the essays that you wrote for essay 1 as our evidence for that. So this page kind of gives you a little bit of a breakdown of what you can expect in Unit number 2. Kind of some of the writing focuses that we have. And then the next one is the actual essay assignment. You can download it, you can save it if you want to. It gives you all the due dates and kind of deadlines and all of that. And we'll talk more about the essay assignment once we get to the drafting phase. But I wanted to give it to you so that you would have it up front. All right, and then we kind of head into our content, right? So the very first piece of content is a series of videos. They're short. This first one, it sounds very, very brainy, and it is. It's about neuroplasticity in the brain. It's only about 2 minutes long, but it's very interesting, and students end up usually really liking it. So there's this quick little video. This video by John Legend, also short, and then one of my favorite videos that I show students, the backwards bicycle. So what I want you to do is I want you to kind of watch these videos. You don't have to take notes, but just kind of key into some of the things they're talking about with regard to kind of the way we think, the way we behave, how we can change our thoughts, how we can change our behaviors, kind of our whole mindset. So you're going to kind of watch these, and then you're going to head into our first reading of the week, which is Carol Dweck's Brainology. Some of you may have been introduced to growth mindset and fixed mindset in previous classes or even in high school. We're going back to the source here, excuse me, with Carol Dweck's article Brainology. I would strongly encourage you to download this or upload it into Google Docs so that way you can annotate it. I've given you some feedback here about how to annotate, but there's a lot of material in this article that students tend to use for the essay. So make sure you kind of take a look at some of these examples of what it means to annotate. It's not just highlighting. I love this little GIF here because sometimes, right, it feels great to highlight. You see a page, it's bright and colorful. It means you've been there, done that, but really, it doesn't really do anything as far as the annotation goes. But the goal is to read Brainology, annotate it, and then you're going to take what you learned from the videos and what you learned from Carol Dweck's article, Brainology, and complete this discussion post about mindset and you. So I'm asking you to draw on your personal experience and then to make connections to DWEC and to those videos. And that act is called synthesis, and it's what we're going to be doing throughout this whole unit. And synthesis basically means to bring together, to combine multiple sources of information and bring them into a whole. So you're going to be bringing in, for this discussion post, your experiences and then connecting them to an idea or ideas that you read about or that you saw. And that's going to be kind of that synthesis. Where do you see those connections? So you're going to need to really read these instructions for the discussion board post, and then you do have a reply due by Thursday. Okay. And there's the reminder page. All right. Our second reading is another another long reading, actually. It's by Rebecca Cox. It's called The Student Fear Factor. Students really end up liking this piece because what Rebecca Cox does is she talks a lot about student fears, and then throughout the article she brings in interviews from community college students, specifically about math and English classes. And so students tend to really connect with what they are saying and kind of what Rebecca Cox has to say about student fears. So this article, what you're going to be doing is reading through it, and you're going to be downloading a quote tracker here. And on this quote tracker, I'm asking you to pull at least 2 quotes from each of the little sections within that chapter of reading. The idea behind pulling the quotes is that you can kind of isolate key ideas and then kind of break them down in your own words, right? So that way you might end up using those for essay number 2. So again, you're going to be downloading the Fear Factor. You can download it as a Word doc or a PDF or a Google Doc where you can make a copy into your own file, and then the quote tracker assignment. So again, you're reading the article, and then as you're reading it, you're kind of pulling material that you think really resonates with you or is interesting to you, or you might even begin to think, oh, well, maybe I have seen some of these things in my classmates' essays. That assignment, the quote tracker, is due by Thursday. So the one thing I will say about the Rebecca Cox article is that it's pretty long. It's a chapter from her book, The Fear Factor. And what I would recommend you doing is maybe breaking it up, unless you have a good chunk of time where you can read it all at once. The quote tracker is due by Thursday with a grace period of Friday, and there's no peer replies or anything to this one. And then next up is your writing territory. Please keep in mind that you do need to make sure that you're proofreading and that you're using that MLA template. Again, there's a template here for you. You don't have to use the template, but it needs to be in MLA formatting, right? Yeah, and that's due by Friday. And as I mentioned at the top, this week there's a lot of reading. So kind of to bring the week to a close, what you're going to be doing is you're going to start reading the student essays, right? So we have 30 students in our section of English 100. That's 15 essays per week. I don't expect you to read all 15 because I divided them into 2 weeks, right? I don't expect you to read all 15, although you certainly can. I want you to try to read 8 student essays. Remember, these are short, 2.5, maybe 3 pages. They're not long essays. They're not long. So the goal here is that you have to start reading your classmates' experiences in order to start thinking about the evidence that you might use for essay number 2. That is, like, what's getting in the way of students being successful, right? As you read their essays, what I want you to do is just jot down some notes. It can be a little overwhelming in terms of kind of remembering who talked about what and all of that. So I created a little note sheet here for you. So that way you could say, oh, I read Jane's essay and she wrote about fear. Oh, I read Sam's essay and he wrote about socioeconomic constraints, right? So it's just a way for you to kind of track some of the big ideas that the students are writing about So that way, when you come time to drafting and kind of thinking about how you want to write essay number 2, you can go back and look at your notes. And you can say, okay, I'm going to write about fear. Which students were talking about fear? And then you'll be able to kind of go back to those students. You'll see in the Google folder of essays that all of the essays are kind of, they're listed alphabetical by first name. That's just how Google does it. So feel free to read any of those essays in the folder. You don't necessarily have to read the first 8. In fact, I'm sure that folks towards the latter part of the alphabet would appreciate if you started at the bottom and read up. Again, it's not required that you read all 15. Just try and strive for reading 8 this week, and then maybe 8 next week. Okay, so again, you've got that little note page that you're going to be jotting down notes on, and then you're going to upload that. You can take a screenshot of it. You can take a picture with your phone, but it's just a way for me to see that you have read the essays and that you have just jotted down some notes about each one. And if you really want to go and make extensive notes, then for sure you can do that. That's not required, but some kind of notes is required. And then that's it. Like, that's the end of the week. So again, this week we're really starting to dive into the student essays. We're starting to dive into the theory pieces. And then in subsequent weeks, we're going to be talking more about how to bring those together and what that looks like in essay form. Okay. All right. That's it for this week. I hope you have a great week. If you are eligible to vote, don't forget to vote. Tomorrow is the recall election of Governor Newsom. So however you vote doesn't matter, but if you're eligible, please participate in that really important process of voting. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. I hope you have a great day.